Well, hello designers. We're back here in Illustrator today learning how to make patterns using the pattern maker option in Illustrator. It's actually quite simple. This lesson is part of the larger unit on textile design where you're going to be learning a lot about colors, color harmony, and color schemes. This lesson is simply a practice of how to use the pattern maker option. You will have to create two projects that are pattern based, and you'll get more instruction on those later. But today it's all about just practicing how to use Pattern Maker, and it's actually quite simple. So let's get started. File, New. Let's call this Practice Pattern. Make sure your number of artboards is set to 1. Make sure your units are set to inches, and we're going to make this a custom size of 20 by 20, and we're going to click OK. The reason we're doing 20 by 20 is 20 by 20 inches is a fairly large swatch, basically, size that you could take a pattern this size and apply it to most products. Now, if you were doing something huge, obviously your document size would need to be set up larger than 20 by 20, but we're going to do 20 by 20 because that would cover most things except for if, like, say you were creating a pattern for a blanket or something large like that. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started by creating what's called a tile. So a tile is simply the square that gets repeated, even if it's not a square, okay? So out in the gray space, we're gonna make our tile. I want you to use any of the tools that you know how to use, any colors you want. You can even apply a gradient if you know how to apply a gradient. I'm just gonna make something really random here. It does matter what size you make this because that's the size. It's going to repeat exactly the size that you do over here. So if you do something really big here, it's only going to repeat it a few times over here. You can even use the paintbrush tool. I'm just doing something really kind of not good, but you get the idea. You can use the line tool, spiral tool. You can be complex or you can be simple, but go ahead and stop the video now, make some kind of a tile shape. Okay, once you have your tile shape, so to speak, or your shapes, you can keep it simple. It can be one shape, in fact, or it can be multiples. You can use your, even your custom shape builder, anything you know how to use, you can do that, okay? And then you're going to select all those pieces and you are going to go to Object, Pattern, Make. Click OK to this box. It's telling you it's going to be added to your swatches panel. And then it's going to show you roughly what your pattern would look like. Now this is a standard grid pattern. Let's go ahead and give this pattern a name. I'm just going to call it my crazy square pattern. And the only reason you would title this is so that you can find it in the swatches panel, and I'll show you in a minute why that might be important. So you've got your grid. I can change it to brick. I can change it to brick by column. I can change it to hex by column. If you do the brick patterns, you do have some options of how offset that is, so you can kind of play around with those settings. You can also change your width and height of the negative space that's in between your tiles. So if I highlight this and use my arrow keys, notice I can increase or decrease them. I can do that with both the width and the height. So that's how you do the general changes to the pattern. So stop the video and start there. Okay, so now that you get a general understanding of how this works, I want to show you that you can still make edits. So I can decide that in here, I do not like this black line. I want to get rid of it. So I can delete elements. I can also change elements. I can move elements. I can resize elements. I can rotate them. I can decide I even want to add more. So I can keep editing, and notice it keeps changing, it keeps updating as I go. So stop the video and try that now. Okay, once I've decided that I've got a good pattern here, now I'm not gonna lie, this is not a great pattern, but hey, it's tough for me to think and talk at the same time. When I'm happy with my pattern, I'm going to click done. Or if I think I'm happy with my pattern, I'm gonna click done. And then you'll notice it disappeared. Where'd it go? Well, it's actually over here. If you open up your swatches panel and you let it hover over what should be a new swatch, notice it's called, there's mine, it's called my Crazy Squares pattern. It's here, it's in the pattern panel. One thing I do want to point out is you cannot use a pattern fill. So if I were to try and fill this instead of a blue square, if I was going to try to fill that with a pattern and then try to send this into Pattern Maker, it's going to tell me I can't do that. You can't do a pattern within a pattern, okay? So how do I get my pattern swatch to make a pattern? Well, we just simply need to grab our rectangle tool. Let's set our fill to none, or our stroke to none. And then for the fill, you want to click on your Crazy Square pattern or whatever you called it. You're clicking on it as your fill. And then we're going to click and drag from corner to corner. And there's our pattern. So a couple things I'm going to show you here is, number one, notice that the area around my tiles, it's actually clear, it's transparent. So when I put it on my artboard, it's showing up white because the standard piece of paper is white. But if I don't want it to be white, if I want that to be a different color, the easiest way to do that, ladies and gentlemen, that I have found over the years is simply to click and drag another square, but then change that fill color to whatever color you want your background to be, the negative space to be. And then I'm just going to bring that and put that on top. So that's the easiest way to change that negative space. And the nice thing about that is then you can very easily change the color. It allows you to change it quite simple. All right, so let's say we come back tomorrow and we don't in fact like this. There's something we don't like. I can still make changes to this pattern. All I have to do is in my swatches panel, I need to double click on that swatch and it's going to open up the editor again. And now I can make my changes if I decide I don't want it to have a stroke. And then I hit done again. And now it's updated. Or maybe I decide I don't like that star that's in there and I don't like this that's in there. And I hit done. And there's my pattern. So go ahead, play around. I want you to create a really nice, simple pattern here. You can be as complex as you want to. And then make sure that we're going to go to File, Save As, if you haven't already, and save it as Practice Pattern in your Lessons folder. And then make sure that before you turn this in for a grade that you do export this as a JPEG. Whenever you're done, you guys should know this by now, when you're done with a lesson or a project, always export as a JPEG. File, export, change that to a JPEG, call it Practice Pattern, and click Save. And that's it. That's your practice. Have fun with it, and I will see you back here next class period.